All right, well, let's dive into this. 2 weeks ago, I shared this. 4 main ways that God uses trials and pain in our lives. So, by the way, did you? Yeah, I guess they're gone. You got the sheets already, Charlie?
Yes,
You are on the
yes.
ball, man. Attaboy. 1, to establish a relationship with us. And then the second one was to mature us spiritually and emotionally and transform us into who He wants us to be. Then the third one was to equip us to be able to do what it is that He wants us to do. And then the fourth one was to show us how much we need Him and how much we can trust Him. And then last week, I went through and explained to you that I know all of this to be true from experience. I've lived it and I'm still living it. And like I did last week, I shared some of the stories that go along with my experiences, learning where I learned how much God cares for us and how much He loves us. So much so that He's proven to me that He can be trusted to provide for all of our needs, even if it takes a miracle. And you know I included my one story about that, right? So in doing this, what I'm doing is I'm going through and answering some of the questions that are commonly asked when we're in pain and when we're suffering. For example, the question I think I brought up, I originated these questions a couple weeks ago, but one of them that I brought up was a very common one: why is this happening to me? Right? Why is this happening to me? Or, does God really care about me? Personally, does He really care about me? Oh yeah, and by the way, He does, so much so that He sent His Son to die for you. And that means if you accept what He did for you on the cross, you'll spend eternity with not only Him, but also the Father and the Spirit. But not only that, that offer is not just for eternity. That offer is also for the here and now. As I've learned, God loves you and me so much, He cares about you and me so much that in the midst of your trials and pain, He'll step in and do something about it. And like I said, even if it requires performing a miracle. Because remember, God is still in the business of miracles. That hasn't expired. And that, like I told you, with my one experience with Him healing my leg, I've also learned that from experience too. So now I'm going to move on to another one of the questions that I previously brought up. And this question now is this one here. Where's God when I'm hurting and I need Him the most? Where is He? And the direct answer to that is too far. I'm going to give you the direct answer and then we're going to go through this. The direct answer is He's right there with you, going through all of it with you. In the Hope program, we go through numerous names of God. And we chose those names because they present a different character trait that applies to a particular aspect of God's process of transformation while we're discussing it. And one of the names that we use is this one, Jehovah Shammah, which means I am the God who is always there. And there's a couple aspects of this name that I want to bring up here. First of all, the Bible teaches that God, as the Father, the Son, and the Spirit, in other words, the Trinity or the Triune Godhead, whatever you want to call them, they have always been in existence. And God refers to this in Exodus 3:14, where He says the following. Went too far. Man. Come on. Stay. All right, we got it. Exodus 3:14, where he says this, I am who I am. This is what you're to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. And then Jesus also expresses this in John 8:58, where he says the following. I tell you the truth, Jesus answered. Before Abraham was born, I am. And incidentally, right after that, the Jews all picked up stones. They were going to stone him because they knew exactly what that meant. He was equating himself with God by using that name, I am. So by speaking of his name in the present tense, he signified that he's always existed in the here and now, right the way it is. As the I am, God has always existed as he is. Then in Hebrews 7:3 we read this. Without father or mother, without genealogy, without beginning of days or end of life. And then in Psalm 102, we read the following. But you remain the same, and your years will never end. So God has been in existence forever, just the way he is, and he always will be. But then at some point in history, he decided to create everything there is out there in the universe where there was once nothing. And the Hebrew term bara is used for this in Genesis, and it means direct creation from God or by God from nothing. And in Genesis 1:1, I think we all know this one. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Incidentally, this is the first mention of a baseball game in the Bible. In the big inning. No? I got a few smirks out of that one. But seriously, I thought that was kind of funny. Thank you. One person agreed, yeah. Oh, you guys are like my 7th graders. Tough crowd. Anyway, when it comes to the point of creation, I am not going to belabor this here because, as you already know, we have gone through an extensive series showing how science emphatically shows us that evolution is not possible. And remember, we did all that with science. So, we're not going to belabor that here. If you haven't heard that, I highly encourage you to go to our YouTube channel and take a listen to those messages. But what I want to just jump to here, without evolution as an option, the only option you are left with, as far as how everything came to be, including us, is that it was the result of a supernatural, divine act of creation. And look what Psalm 102 says in verse 25. In the beginning, you laid the foundations of the earth, and the heavens are the work of your hands. And then in 2 Chronicles 2, we read this. Too far. There we go. 2:12. Praise be to the Lord, the God of Israel, who made heaven and earth. So God has 3 persons, has always been there, he always will be there, during and ever since the time of his creation. He's Jehovah Shammah, the God who is always there. But what I want to point out here now is that he not only created all things from nothing, he also designed an unparalleled level of order into his creation. And that's what we want to take a look at here, the order that he's designed into his creation. Job 25:2 says this, dominion and all belong to God. He establishes order in the heights of heaven. Everywhere you look in the universe, you see signs of order and planning, all through God's designs. Psalm 19:1 tells us, the heavens are telling of the glory of God, and their expanse is declaring the works of his hands. Sir James Jeans. I think that's how you pronounce that. He was probably French, so I'm saying it the English way. But anyway, he was one of the greatest astronomers ever. And he said that as a result of all of his studies and looking at the enormous complexity of our universe, it led him to believe that everything came into existence out of one gigantic thought from a great mathematician. Now what I want to do here, I want to look at some specific examples of this. Start with, the Earth is the right composition, the right size, the right angle, and the exact place in our solar system in order to sustain life. Even if it was 10% bigger or smaller, or farther or closer away from the sun, life couldn't exist here. If it wasn't tilted at 23.5 degrees, the temperature extremes would be too great to sustain life. If our moon wasn't in the exact spot that it was in, life would cease, because the moon creates the tides, and that helps to purify and oxygenate the oceans. Without this, plankton couldn't survive, and neither could we, because plankton serve as the beginning of our food chain. I guess if plankton couldn't survive, it wouldn't bother Mr. Krabs, would it? Yeah. Right? You guys were all thinking that, so I thought I'd go ahead and say it, right? How about this? The composition of our atmosphere. 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, and we have 1% of various trace elements in there. It's unlike anything else out there, and it's essential for life. And the tides also serve to mix these elements. That helps us keep breathing. The thickness of our atmosphere also protects us, I should say, from the billions of bits of cosmic debris that are constantly trying to bombard us. Then we have the ozone layer out there in the atmosphere, and that helps to filter out the deadly rays from the sun so we don't literally get fried. However, in doing that, it also lets enough through to keep the growth of things like green algae in check and prevent it from growing and taking over all the oceans and fresh waters of the world. And then if you look at the Earth and its content, you have a relatively small crust. But beneath that, you have, shall we say, oodles of molten lava that if it all escaped at the same time, everything on the surface would get fried. What about water? If water didn't have the qualities it did, life couldn't survive here. If it wasn't actually lighter when it's frozen, and it's the only substance that is, by the way, with the exception of one called bismuth. But anyway, if water wasn't like that, when it got cold, the waterways would freeze from the bottom up, and then everything inside them would die. Algae would die, our oxygen supply would die, and guess what? We would die. Yeah, we would be next. If you looked at, we're not actually going to, but to summarize data from quantum physics, you see unbelievable order and an uncontainable yearning, that they say, for the subatomic particles to be driven towards symmetry. We can look at our bodies. We can examine all the order that you find in our cells, our tissues, our organs, our systems, etc., that are all there to keep us alive. I mean, all you got to do is look at the structure of things like, pick out a few: heart, liver, lungs, what else? Kidneys, bones, muscles, skin, on and on and on. Brains. Most of us have those anyway. I know a few people that might argue that they don't, but then let's get even smaller. How about the ridiculous amount of order that I talked about when I talked about the structure and complexity of DNA in molecular biology? You remember all that? Remember all the ridiculous amount of order that we found in there? So, we could go on and on here, because there are indeed countless examples that show how order has been planned into God's design. He put everything in there needed for it to exist. So hopefully you're getting the point here, right here, that God continuously provides order in life. And He does this in spite of the fact that for every example I mentioned and any example that you can come up with, there is an impending doom lurking at the doorway if the order is not maintained. And that brings me all to say this. Right here. If God has the ability to maintain such order in the face of chaos throughout the entire universe, could He not be trusted to do the same thing in your life? If God can orchestrate everything that's out there with a plan that pays such incredible attention to detail, can He not be the only possible choice to restore order and make sense of all the chaos that's going on in your life? If God can hold everything together the way that He does without any effort, would He not be able to do the same thing for you? When you examine the works of His hands, would they not be the same hands you would want your life in, working out His detailed plan for your life? And as I explained, God has been planning and taking care of His creation since the dawn of time. He maintains the order in everything that He created. He's in control of it all. God is sovereign. Nothing escapes His plan or His order. God knows exactly what every part of creation needs in order to be able to function just the way He designed it to function. And folks, please understand that includes you. Please get this. God can and will provide the order that you need in your life. By the way He's worked all that out for all of His creation, He's proven to you that He can do the same thing for you. He's not too busy to take care of you. He has all the time required to restore order to your life. In fact, He specializes in providing order in the face of chaos. So He can do the same in your life. He can take the pieces of your life and put them back together in a way that can create something beautiful. And furthermore, please understand, not only do you have the fact that God provides order in the face of chaos going for you, but please understand that you are also made in His image. Take a look at Genesis 1:26. God says this, "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness." Which, by the way, shows that all three members of the Trinity were involved, because He's referring to our. And then in Genesis 1:27, it says this, "So God created man in His own image. In the image of God He created him. Male and female He created them." So please get this. God made you, and He made you in His image. So what I want to do now is help you grasp the significance of this. Because God designed you and He made you, it means He also has a plan that He designed for you and into you when He made you. God has a plan for you and your life that He wants to bring to completion. And it's a good plan, filled with purpose and hope, a future. Jeremiah 29:11 tells us this. "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. So what this means, folks, God made you for a purpose, and He has a good plan for your life. It's not a plan that He developed just on the spur of the moment. It's a plan He's been developing and orchestrating for a long, long time. And I want to explain to you how I know that. And I'm going to start with Psalm 139. In verses 13 to 16, we read the following. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place. When I was woven together in the depths of the earth, your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. And then I want to look at one more. Jeremiah 1:5 says this. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. So you see the same theme in both those passages. So the question is, how could God know us and see us before we were formed? That's a good question. Now, you could answer and say, there's some miraculous ways that He could do that since He's God that we would not be able to comprehend. However, yes, He is omnipresent. That's what I'm saying. Some of the miraculous ways that we can't understand that because we're bound by time. He's not.
It's like watching the end of the movie.
That's, yeah, right.
Like I already know.
So there are a lot of head-scratching things that come along with being omnipresent and not being bound by time. So there are ways that are miraculous that we would not be able to understand. But what I want to point out here is the biological way that God could do that is the same way that an architect can see a house before it's built. He looks at the blueprints. And the same thing holds true for you in your blueprints, your DNA. There we go. I'm going too far. Right there. Your blueprints, the same way, your DNA. Now, I already thoroughly discussed DNA, so we're not going to do that here again. I just want to point out a couple things. I want to point out that everything you need to create you exactly the way you are is in your blueprints, your DNA. And with the exception of identical twins, no two people have the same DNA. The differences found within the DNA sequence are what make us all unique. So if you knew a person's entire DNA sequence and you knew everything that it meant, you would know exactly what they were going to be like before they came into existence. Therefore, what Psalm 193 and Jeremiah 1 both tell us is this. It's there, trust me. Stay. There we go. What they tell us is this. God must know exactly which 2 copies of DNA are needed at the moment of your conception for Him to be able to know you long before you were even born. Your DNA contains all the information to make you just who you are. And you get half from your father, and you get half from your mother. Okay? So, God must, not only must He know what's needed in your exact copies of DNA, He must also know the exact copies of DNA that were needed at the moment of the conception of both of your parents. Otherwise, The 2 DNA copies that were needed to create you could not have come from them. You see that? Then we can take that back even farther. The same holds true for your grandparents and for your great-grandparents and so on and so forth. In fact, you can take this logic all the way back to Adam and Eve. Each conception, he has to know exactly which 2 copies of DNA are needed in order to make you, you. So here's the point of all this. God has personally been thinking about you, planning who you are, and designing his plan for you and into you for a long, long time. And then some. In fact, you can't even imagine how long he's been doing all this. So let me ask you a question. Have you ever heard this question? How do you spell love? You spell the answer T-I-M-E. That's time, by the way, in case you're not following along. Time. T-I-M-E. Because the fact is, you can tell how much someone cares about someone or something by looking at how much time, effort, and resources they invest in that person or thing. Because the fact of the matter is, we prioritize what we care about the most. Things that matter the most to us get the most of our time. If you stop and think about that, you'll see how true that is in your own life. And that not only holds true for our time, it also holds true for our effort and our resources. In addition to more time and planning than we can imagine, God has also spent his effort and resources to give you a place of great significance in his creation. And I want to look at that. Psalm 8, 3-8 says this: "When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars, which you have set in place, what is man that you are mindful of him, the Son of Man that you care for him? You made him a little lower than the heavenly beings and crowned him with glory and honor. You made him ruler over the works of your hands. You put everything under his feet, all flocks and herds, and the beasts of the field, the birds of the air, the fish of the sea, and all that swim the path of the seas." And then in Genesis 1:26-31, we read about how God made man to rule over all his creation. Plus, he's given us all the resources in his creation to be successful in this. And if you go to Genesis 1:29-30, it says this: "Then God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They'll be yours for food. And to all the beasts of the earth, all the birds of the air, all the creatures that move on the ground, everything that has the breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food." And it was so. In addition, God has given you his best effort in creating you and developing his plan for you. We know this to be true because in Genesis 1:28, the Bible says this: "God blessed them, said to them, be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it." And then in that chapter, verse 31, it says this: "God saw all that he made, and it was very good." If you were not his best effort in creation, God would not have blessed you, he would not have crowned you with glory and honor, and he would not have said of his creation of you that it was very good. So let me go back to Psalm 8. Answer this question that we read: what is man that God is mindful of him? And let me go back and personalize it. Who are you that God is mindful of you? And here's the answer. The answer is, you are of great value and worth to God. He designed you and He created you that way. He's proven it with all the time, effort, and resources He spent on creating you and developing His plan for you. So no matter how you feel today, no matter what you're going through, no matter what you will go through, the truth is that you personally are significant to God. Since He's God, He never has to say, oops, right? You personally are significant to God. He created you with a well-conceived plan for your life, one that He's been working on for a long, long time. You know, I like to say there may be accidental parents, but there are no accidental births. Since He's invested so much in you, God's willing to give you everything that you need to see that His plan for you is successful. So He's not too busy for you. He's not too busy to care about the things that you care about, the things that trouble you. Just the opposite is true. He has all the time in the world for you. God is very busy working out His plan for you in your life because you are significant to Him. He truly cares about every minuscule detail of your life. That includes all your past, your present, and whatever comes your way in your future. He cares about you because He loves you and He accepts you. And please understand this. God's acceptance of you is based on who He is and what Jesus did on the cross. It is not based on who you are or what you've experienced. Does that make sense? It's based on Him, not you. So therefore, you are secure in and with God. So what this means, you personally matter to the God of the universe. You are worthwhile to God, and therefore you are worthwhile in life. These last couple statements I put up there are worth taking the time to consider and understand the full implications of all this. You personally matter to the God of the universe. You are worthwhile to Him, and you are worthwhile in life. He's proven that to you, as I just went through, by His actions of creating everything you need in the amount of time that He has spent working on you. And I want to do something here, because this is critical. This is a critical point. I want to do something here that we do. Specifically, we have this in the Hope Ministry. I want everybody to read this. And you see where those big blanks are? You know what goes in there? Your name. For example, David is worthwhile. God loves David. David matters to God, and David matters in life. And now, let's do it. You guys do it. Put your own name in there. Go ahead. Do it in unison. You can do it. Don't be shy.
It's going to be a lot of discord.
I did it. You all know your names, right? That won't be a problem. Go ahead. Do it.
DeAndre is worthwhile. God loves DeAndre. DeAndre matters to God. DeAndre is worthwhile.
Excellent. And for all those yous, Let me try that again.
You know who you are.
For all those, is what I was trying to say, out there in TV land, I encourage you to do the exact same thing that we just did. Insert your own name in these statements and then repeat it. What we do in Hope, we have it in the book. We tell people, print it out, stick it around, make copies of it, put it places that you will see it often, and repeat it often. Same thing for you folks out there too. Even though you may be hurting, you may be unhappy, you don't understand why things in your life are out of control and why they're happening the way they are, you are still worthwhile to God, and you are still worthwhile. You still matter to Him and in life. And folks, here, your current situation and your pain do not change that. They do not change the fact that you're still worthwhile to God and He loves you right where you are. God has a plan and a purpose for your life, and He's not finished with you yet. You know, nobody remembers the start of the race, right? Or maybe even the middle. It's the end. So if you're not finished yet, the race isn't finished. It's not that exciting yet. What is yet to come can be the most exciting bits. That's what I'm getting at. Does that make sense? You're not here by accident. God is not absent. God loves you enough to care about you and all the pain that you're going through now or will go through tomorrow. God's not out to get you. He's not against you, no matter how you may feel or how it appears. That's something I struggled with for a long time. I always thought I was fighting Him on top of everything else. But it turned out I was fighting Him for a different reason. Not because He was against me. I wouldn't let Him take over. And that's a topic we're going to talk more about. God knows everything about you. He knows everything about what you're experiencing or you will experience. And He really loves you and really cares about everything you will ever experience in life. In fact, He's the very essence of love. We get that right out of 1 John 4. Verse 8 says, God is love. So this question, right back to it again. Where's God when I'm hurting and I need Him the most? As we already said, I'll put it up there again. There it is. He's right there with you. He always has been there. He always will be there. That means God was right there while any of your pain was happening in the past. He's right there with you while it's happening right now in the present. And He'll always be there with you for anything in the future. But He's not there just to, shall we say, go along for the ride. He's there to take you to a better place. Because of your value and your worth to Him, He wants to take you to a place that's deserving of your value and worth to Him. I like to say, if you're in a pit or a hole or whatever, Jesus doesn't come along and pull you out of that and leave you there and walk off. He pulls you out of there to take you to a better place. So the good question here would be, so how does that happen? And that, right on time. How does that happen? Well, that is exactly what we're going to work towards in this series. Because that's not an answer, that's not something you can answer in just one statement. It's His process of transformation. And that's what we're going to talk about extensively as we go through this series. So from this point here, we will pick it up next week.